So I really do see my role as gathering you, our church body, to become a part of this transform building and remodel campaign. So sorry, got sidetracked. I want you to be able to realize what your skills are, and we can utilize those. So we have a few teams that still need some people on it, and we'd love for you to join us. So I want you to join us in this as we create a hub for our community.
You got a clap.
Thanks,
And so when she told me this, I don't know how long ago it was. She has to tell me a couple times because I never remember the first time. But so why? Give us just your why.
Yeah.
Why did you accept this?
I really do have a passion for seeing people find their full potential and what God has called them to do in their life. So you might not see it yet, but I hope that through this process that you can maybe learn some new skills or build upon some skills you already have, and add them to our church body and help us to grow our community. Toby and I actually was born and raised in the West Plains, and about 6 years ago, Toby and I made a choice to put down roots here and invest in our community. So it's exciting to me to kind of see where we've come, and I just hope that you can see that same joy and excitement in your lives.
Yeah, and I said this first service, and I always like to give the clarification. So in a former life, I used to work a lot on base, and so at a time, I had to do a lot on Sunday on base, and so Marissa would attend the Heights, kind of right in the beginning of right when we planted and launched. So it was always like this was Marissa's church, and I was just kind of like the tag along. So it's like it was probably more like, I think you have a husband that comes. It's like, yeah. So that was good. So why, I love this transform remodel campaign. So like, why would anybody want to join this? Or
Yeah, so if you don't know, if this is your first time here, or if maybe you haven't been listening in past services, we purchased a building in the heart of Airway Heights, and we're going to transform that space. And it's a building that needs a little love, but with our hard work and all of our energy, it's going to become something beautiful for this community. It's going to be the hub of transformation, and we're just excited to see you have the opportunity to step out in faith and jump on board and join us. I had a vision of what does it look like when we open the doors to that building for the first time to our community, and they walk in and they see us on fire for them, serving our community, being there, and giving them an option to transform their hearts and their vision and their minds. So it's something to be a part of, and I'm excited for you to join us.
I love it. So what kind of roles do you need help with?
Yeah, so we actually have, I'm going to invite our team. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody.
So if you are on that transform team, why don't you go ahead and come on up?
I'm going to have our team leaders. We have some very specific groups that need you on them. They're just going to introduce themselves and what team they're a part of or they're leading and what they have a vision for what they need. So we're going to be starting our meetings next week, this coming week, and it's not a large time commitment. I know sometimes we all have a lot going on in our lives already, so it's just a couple hours, and it's just a way to invest. So.
Hi, my name is Tanya Wilder, and I am in charge or the lead of the communications team. And what I need help with is we're going to gather all the information for the rest of the team and communicate it to the community and to our church members. So what that entails is Facebook, if you love Facebook, or website, any kind of communication device. We got to get it back to Pastor and to the rest of us. So I think if that's what you want to do, come see me.
Yeah, if you're on Facebook right now, that could be the role.
That's not good.
We found your team.
I'm Linda DeLong, and I'm the lead for hospitality, which is the fun part. We get to party, we get to cook, we get to have, provide a lot of the good stuff to everybody. But I would appreciate anybody that decides that they want to help out with hospitality that is good in cooking, planning parties, anything like that. I'd really appreciate it.
And I'm Sharon Coble, and I'm in charge of the prayer group. And basically, I have a vision to pray for our teams, and watch the Lord give divine strategies to every team member and that he has, because I'm convinced that the chair you're sitting on was started out as a dream. And then it became a reality, and now we're sitting on it. And this is a dream that God has laid on our hearts, and we're going to cooperate with him and see it come to pass. How we specifically are going to pray, we'll see what the Lord does. But if you're a prayer or not, but you'd like to know how to pray, let's just join us, okay?
That's good.
My name is Jeremiah. I feel like I just stepped into a church that I've never been to before. This second service, a whole bunch of new faces here. So, my name's Jeremiah. I go to first service, obviously. You may have heard Jacob mention my name. I do exist. So I am the team lead for numbers team. Great, right? Yeah. Numbers team. No, budget. Budget's what I like to say. So my background is construction. I own a construction company. So this build is something that's right in my wheelhouse. So we would like, if you have attention to detail, you're a numbers person, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing on this team, is putting those numbers together, figuring out ways that project's going to come together, and take it from there. So if you don't mind being held accountable and are attention to detail, then I might be a good fit for you.
This is so good. I love it. Yes.
I'm Ryan, and I'm overseeing the marketing committee. We're going to be putting together brochures and materials, messaging, and that kind of thing, and sharing that with the church and other groups as part of the campaign.
Yeah. Amen.
That's great.
Thanks, you guys. So
let's give a giant round of applause.
If you are interested, if you haven't already, join one of these teams. You can speak to them in person after service, or you can jump on our app. It's Transform Building, and there's a link directly to plug in your information and what team you're interested in be a part of. So if you want to think about that and pray about that. But we are going to start meetings in those individual teams this coming week, so make sure you jump on that now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Can we give Marissa a giant round of applause, too? Also, there's an app. There's actually an app behind your chair. There's a green card behind your chair. You can put it on that response card, too. So sometimes it can be that impulsive, like, I feel I should do something, but before I say no, let me put my name on it. This would be the time to do that. And then we will find a great role for you. Right now, I get to bring up another very important person in my life and in yours. Jacob Powers.
Oh my God. I'm still trying to think of something funny to say, Toby. I got nothing this service. I'm so sorry. Well, good morning. Morning. It's glad to see you all here today. As I was thinking about that team that volunteered to step up here and really put themselves out there, it's great because when I asked them to do this job, to lead these different teams, I really didn't know what they were supposed to. They asked me, do you have a job description? I'm like, well, it's kind of fluid right now. I'm going to have you help me design this job description. But really what it was an ask, and then it was a step into faith. And I believe for all of us, there's going to be those seasons of life where we don't quite know where we're going or how we're going to get there, and it's going to take a step of faith. Why? Because we believe Jesus is worth it. We believe people's eternities are worth it. And when people come to know Jesus, lives start getting transformed, hearts, faith, their mind. And so we believe it's important. What we're doing here is not just doing church on Sunday morning, but we're believing God is bringing flourishing to our communities. And to do that, we're going to take a step of faith, and we're going to do things that we don't think are possible. And so our series is called Walking on Water. That seems like kind of a confusing series. What does it mean to walk on water? It's bizarre, it's out there, but I believe that we'll get the understanding this as we continue to go through the scriptures today. To start it off, a couple weeks ago, Dave, one of our church members, spoke on authority. What does it mean to have that authority? Jesus, when he lived here on earth and he had people that were following him, he didn't just lead and do all this stuff. He actually gave authority to his disciples, not just to say stuff and to speak things, but he actually gave them faith and authority and to do the same things he was doing here on earth and to continue to do today. Last week we talked about a great miraculous moment. It's one of the most amazing miracles, I believe, and it's in every single one of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We see it multiple times, and it was this story where there was this large gathering of people, and there was this bread that was handed out. But what I talked about is Jesus was, yes, he was the source of this miracle. He blessed this bread. But what really happened is he handed it to the disciples, and disciples took that bread and they broke it. As they broke it, they fed thousands of people with a few fishes and loaves. Jesus was the source, but disciples did the miracles. And to be honest, I still believe Jesus is doing miracles today. That it wasn't just something that happened 2,000 years ago, that honest to God, real miracles happen today. And we're going to see that. We're going to continue to talk about it. And if Jesus is still doing that today, then it's going to take each and every one of us to believe that. And there's going to be this boat you see in there that I'm going to talk about this morning. And so my message title is simple. It's this, is sometimes we've got to get out of the boat. Get out of the boat. What does that mean? Well, if I took a poll in this room, and I've done it before, if I said, okay, who in this room loves change? They love new ideas, and they love jumping into new areas, and they just want something new going on. And at the same time, and I'm not saying it's you, there's another group of us that I like how it is right now. I like it structured. I like to know what's going on, and please do not change things around. And I think there's some of us that probably sit right in the middle. I don't like to overly change, but I like structure at the same time, but I like new opportunities. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was one of those guys that I love following orders. As military police, we had an SOP, standard operation procedure, meaning they told us exactly what we were supposed to do and how we were supposed to do that. And so we would have officers, and an officer would have their way of doing it, SOP, and then we had the enlisted way of doing it, the actual way stuff got done, right? And so there was a difference between officer and enlisted. Sorry for the officers out there. But there was one day I remember, and I was pretty good. I knew what I was supposed to do. We did a good job, and everything went how it was supposed to. And we had this hotshot second lieutenant come in. And boy, he went to some new training, and he knew absolutely everything. And I remember that we went toe-to-toe. I was like, sir, you come in here, you actually don't have any idea what's going on. Just because you learned it in some class doesn't make it right. And what I felt like he was doing in this time is he was coming in, he was rocking the boat, he was shaking up things that were working and functioning just fine. And being like any good second lieutenant, he put me in my place. And it turned out that he actually had some good ideas. I know it's a miracle. See, I told you they happened. He had a few good ideas. And yes, he rocked the boat, but it wasn't just for rocking the boat's sake. What does rocking the boat mean? It says to say or do something to disturb an existing situation. Sometimes we do it on purpose. Sometimes it just happens. We don't like to disturb things, especially if we have it all figured out. If you spend all this time trying to figure out how to do something and it's working well, why do you want to change it? And I'll tell you right now, if you are following Jesus, I'm just saying, if you are following Jesus and he starts to nudge you to take a step of faith, move in a new direction, overcome some type of obstacle, he is going to disturb your current situation. Jesus rocks boats all the time. We look at it through Scripture, his followers, and he is doing it today. If church is not your thing, and you're here because someone promised you donuts, and they're great, I'll tell you this right now. Even in your life, in your journey, in your family, in your job, and wherever you're going, there's going to be some twists and turns along the way. Things that you did not expect. Directions you did not plan on going. And that's exactly what happened to a group of guys who heard of this Jesus guy. They dropped everything, and they started following. Yes, this story took place 2,000 years ago. And just like me, I sometimes ask myself, how can a story that happened 2,000 years ago still be applicable today? Well, it's because of what Jesus did here on earth. It didn't just stop in that day. What he unleashed during that time of his life continues to be unleashed today. And as those followers took twists and turns, and they took journeys in their life, I'm guessing they never thought was going to happen. We can look at that life and see that life is for us too. Because we have that same authority, that same power that God's still working today. I believe if we're up for it, If we're really up for it, I believe Jesus will start asking us to do and to step into territories that we never thought we would go to. I think about our team stepping up to lead in this campaign, things that they thought they would never do. And just like these disciples that were following Jesus, every day was a surprise. Every day was a new adventure. And that's where we jump on. We had all these disciples. I shared the story. They're following Jesus, and they're hanging out, and people just keep showing up. I mean, people are showing up by the thousands. They hear about Jesus. Jesus is healing people. They're setting people free. He has so much great teaching, and so they come, and all these disciples are around, and it's crowd control time. Things that they never thought they would have to do is crowd control. Breaking them up, give people food, and they do this all day long. And I imagine they've been doing this for days. And it becomes evening time, and I'm sure they're exhausted, and they're worn out, and they're tired. And Jesus recognizes, and so Jesus sends the people home, and he has something special for the disciples. Probably not what they imagined. And that's where we're going to jump in. Matthew 14, if you have your Bibles, you can follow along there with me. Again, it's Matthew 14. If you have your app, this is the one time you can jump on it. To follow along under message notes is the scripture I'll be using today, in case in your life if you want to reference it. So Matthew 14:22 through 24. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake. Again, he had done all these miracles, this massive thing of handing out bread and disciples. And while he sent the people home, after sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. After sending them home, he went up into the hills to pray by himself. Meanwhile, his disciples were in trouble far away from the land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. What did Jesus do? It was a busy day. Jesus went away for some R&R time, right? Jesus is going to go alone and pray and kind of refresh and refocus. At the same time, he knows his disciples are probably tired and worn out. He's like, great, I'm going to give you guys kind of a pleasure cruise. You go out on a boat, relax. I'm going to catch up with you a little bit later. Well, it didn't quite work out the way the disciples thought. Unbeknownst that this sea, this lake that they were on is notorious for storms that pick up in a moment's notice. Storms that smart fishermen know if it's getting bad that you've got to be ashore because people didn't survive on these waters. And so they get in there, and Jesus puts his disciples in a boat. He goes to have some quiet time, and the disciples are like, hey, maybe we'll get a chance to rest and relax, decompress from a long day. And the storm kicks up, and these waves kick up, and before you know it, it's probably 2 miles in the middle of this water. And it's the middle of the night. There's no rest, no relaxation. And I thought to myself, if I was this guy, and I'm following Jesus, and we did all these things, Jesus put me, what were you thinking, Jesus? Like, you put me in this boat, now I'm in this situation because you asked me to be here. Where's my R&R that you got? I think there's times like that these experiences, this time in our life where we don't expect it, start to come up unexpectedly. It said it right there that a wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. They were out there on the water and it was not good. We're not talking a little choppy waves. That heavy waves were coming, dark, stormy waters. It was not good. These guys were put in a boat by Jesus, and the next thing they know, they're fighting a nightmare. This is a natural thing, the storm out here. And I think it happens all the time in life. Sometimes we don't expect it, the unexpected things. We get in, we feel like we're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're going where we're supposed to be going, and stuff comes up, and we didn't have it. Our leaders on the team, when they came on, and I just thought about when I was writing this, when I asked them to step on this team, I didn't tell them they'd only have 3 weeks to put it all together. They were thinking they had months to plan this. And I was like, no, there's things that when we step out in faith, unexpected things come up. Kim and I were discussing as we were going through, and we were looking back at our lives. I'm like, what are those times that we felt like we were really being obedient? Like, man, we're doing what Jesus wants. It's so cool. We're going to step out even more. And there was one time that we're gonna financially give, and we're like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna give more than we've ever given before. And it was right at that time that we made the decision and we gave that. And she shared it before that our washing machine actually catch fire on the back of it. Our dishwasher broke down, and our car broke down right in that season. It's like, Jesus, you just told me to be faithful. Like, I just did everything. Like, I felt like the Lord saying, be generous with your heart. And then before you know it, everything is kind of a storm in our life. And as we've looked back over our 12 years of following Jesus and going where every time I felt like we've stepped out of faith, it's not always negative. It's just that something comes up that we just didn't expect. And God wants to grow us just a little bit more in this process. But it all started with us saying, yes, and knowing that it's not going to be the road that we thought it was going to be. We found ourselves in the middle of a storm. Right now, every time I feel like I get comfortable, I believe Jesus shows up even more. Why would anybody want to get into a boat like that? Step out and find yourself in the middle of the storm. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. But I will tell you what happens when you do. Look what happens in this next part of this passage. Verse 25, it says, about 3 o'clock in the morning, all night, this is crazy, the storm is raging on. Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Of course, this is the crazy, bizarre part. Jesus comes walking on the water, but I get it. He's God. He can do stuff like this. When the disciples saw him walking on the waters, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" And Jesus at the time said, "Hey, calm down, weirdos. It's going to be okay." And Jesus spoke at once. "Don't be afraid." He said, "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called out to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you. Tell me to come to you walking on the water." And Jesus' response is probably not what he expected. He said, "Yes, come on. Let's do this." Jesus was inviting an everyday, ordinary guy who lacked faith at times, who would deny knowing Jesus, who would mess up, this everyday, ordinary fisherman, to do something miraculous. Yeah, come on. Take that step of faith. What he was really saying is, Peter, I want you to continue to follow me. You got to follow me. Your journey is just beginning. The time is up for playing it safe. It's time to step out. I love those words that ring out. Take courage. In the midst of all of this, Jesus, it's powerful, it's strong. He says, I want you to take courage. Here I am. Peter, I've got you. We will go through times and we'll face fear. We'll question those moments. Why am I stepping out in faith? God, are you sure I should do this? We can find ourselves asking those questions when we know we're following Jesus and he's right in front of us. And why? Are you going to really be there? We want to kind of test. Are you sure, Jesus, this is what you want me to do? Thought about there lots of times. Jesus, I know I really want to raise, but you got to give me a sign first. Make sure someone sends me the email or have my boss call me into my office. You know, I would serve more, but I need you to free my time up first, Jesus. I promise I'm going to do more, but I want you to free up what's going on in my life. I want to make amends in that relationship, but that person better apologize first. They need to start it, and then I will come through and finish it. Lord, I'd love to quit that addiction, but I need you to help me out. I need you to start this process. If you want me to walk away from this destructive relationship, then give me something. Give me a sign. Kind of feel like that's what Peter was doing there. Jesus, if you really want me to do this, then I want you to invite me out. Then I want you to ask me. I love how Jesus responds, because he doesn't give him the answer. He invites him, says, Peter, I need you to take the first step. Verse 29 says, yes, come, Jesus said. You, Peter, you take this step. Take courage, but I want you to take the step. And so Peter went over to the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. Peter walked on water. We read this so quickly, maybe we're scanning through and we're like, oh, cool, Jesus, Peter walked on water, no big deal. But then you put the story back in context. And so we're out on a fishing boat, people, and it's in the middle, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. If you've ever been on a fishing boat in choppy water, it's not fun. It's dark, it's cold, it's windy, there's rolling waves. Who would get out of a boat like that? Who would go into that water? I remember as a kid, I would go fishing up in Vancouver, and it was like one of the, like springtime, I don't remember what time of year it was, but it was nice out one day. And we're sitting on the dock, and it's ocean water, and it's not the Bahamas, like blue, and no fish is swimming, right? It's like dark and murky. You can't see it an inch through the water. And we had this little debate like, man, we should jump in there and go swimming. And it was cold. And I was like, I'm not jumping in that water. I have no idea what's in it. I saw Jaws as a kid. Man, I didn't swim in the ocean for years, right? I was like, there is no way I'm getting in that water. There's something cold and dark and unknown in it. What if something gets me? That's real. I'm just putting myself out there. And so I just imagine Peter, and again, it's a crazy story, it's standing on the edge of a boat. right? And it's like, and he's like, Jesus is like, come on, walk out there. And there's that moment that he looks at this choppy water, this rolling water, this dark, unforgiving spot. And Peter has to actually physically reach out, and there's that moment he has to put this foot down, right? Where everything in a moment, he would just disappear. And chances are on a boat like that, no one's going to find him. And he does it. He takes that step. Jesus doesn't like help him over the rail. He just says, come, and he has this cool moment where he steps and he hits water and he walks on it. He walks on the water. There are times in our life we will follow Jesus. We'll take a step of faith like that. We'll try something new. And it's amazing when you take a step of faith and you're like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. And at the same time, Jesus is saying, you got this, take courage, you've got this. And you're thinking to yourself, I got this, I can do it. Everything in the natural world says this does not make sense. Everything we would know today, this does not make sense. Nothing makes sense. It is not natural to get out of the boat and step on water. But he did it, one foot in front of the other. And I love this leap of faith. And for us, maybe it's taking that leap of faith and starting a job that you never thought you would get. It's starting a new relationship. Maybe it's starting to serve in an area in this church that you wouldn't do before, and you're doing it. You're stepping out. Maybe it's that time you took a second chance on someone that doesn't deserve it, or maybe you've left an unhealthy situation or are facing a health issue that seemed impossible, but you face it. You face it, and you take a step of faith, and you're doing it. Maybe it's this time that you have one of those dark secrets in your life and you bring it to light, and people actually continue to love you in the process. And no one's judging you. They welcome you for who you are, and you're like, Lord, I'm doing it. And we have this moment of clarity like, yes, it's all coming together. You can taste success. Then life hits you in the face just as bad. There is a moment that human nature says, I can't do this. It happens. We get in the moment where we're taking ground. We've stepped out of faith. We're feeling success. And then something inside of us clicks and says, maybe I can't do this. Something goes wrong, or conversation, or something happens, and you start telling yourself, I can't do this. That is a real emotion. That's real life right there. The world will crash back in on you. And it happened to Peter, a man who had just walked on water, had that moment. He was doing a miracle. The thing that we thought only Jesus could do, this guy was doing it. Verse 30 says, but when he saw the storm and the wind and the waves, he was terrified, and he began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately, not in a little while, immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have such little faith, Jesus says. Why did you doubt me? When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Do you see that? He was terrified. Why? Because reality was sinking in. Sometimes when we step out and do something we didn't want to do or uncomfortable and in uncharted waters, we can feel like the world's closing in on us. And there's those moments where we feel like maybe I can't do this. Are you crazy, God? What are you asking me to do? And there's this adrenaline rush in that moment. Fight, flight, or freeze. That human response that we have. And it was in that very moment that Jesus says, I want you to look at me. Look at me. Peter in that moment didn't turn around and scramble back onto the boat. He didn't holler for the guys, pull me back in. He just focused his eyes on Jesus. Says, I want you to look at me. And there's something about our mind when we just focus our attention. A few years back, I was driving up by Spokane Community College, and I was riding along, and there was a van and a car, and this girl was crossing the road, and he couldn't see this van here, like I'm behind the van, and the car was coming up, and I see this girl riding. This car can't see her. She just keeps riding. Truck stops, car can't see it, and hits this girl on her bike. So I stop the car, and I get out, and I'm not an EMT, I'm not emergency qualified. I have been through like disaster and like crisis training. But I remember I just ran up to a moment, and it was like this shock. And when we go into shock or anything happens, the whole world starts to spin. You don't know. And I remember in that moment just saying, I just want you to focus your attention on me. Just focus. You're going to be okay. Just focus. Just breathe. Just focus. And she was okay. I don't know how it happened. She was okay. And it's that moment, that experience for me that I sometimes think, and when everything seems out of control, and I've stepped out of faith, and I feel like I'm sinking, and you have to believe that Jesus is saying, like, I want you to focus on me. It's going to be okay. Because in our mind, when things are out of control, we can think things that we would otherwise not think. Emotions make us do things that we didn't think our emotions would make us do, and react in ways that we don't want to react. And that's real life, but it's in those moments that Jesus is saying, I want you to focus your attention on me. It's the cornerstone of my counseling. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a counselor. All I do is let's focus our attention back on Jesus. What is he saying to do in our life? How are we walking that? And it's just a reminder. And Jesus says, I got this. More than saying just I got this, he's saying, I've got you. I've got you. Are you starting to pick up the theme of this story? It's a simple message. Everyday life, we will face times when we have to take a step. There will be times in our life that we talk about that we can have to let fear go. Fear cannot control us. And we have to step into the unknown. This is all I want you to remember this morning. If you walk away and be like, what did Jacob talk? He's like, there's times in life that I've got to take that step. You know what that step is. We've been there before. What is that step that we have to take? It's easier said than done. But all Jesus says, if you take that step, I just want you to keep your eyes on me. Hebrews 12, 1-2 says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. Listen to this. This is good. What does it say? We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. He initiated and is the perfecter of our faith. Let me say that again. We kind of take ownership of our faith. And we take ownership of other people's faith. But the truth is God initiates that change. God is the one that's of invitation. He's the one. God is initiating it. And even the cooler part is he's the one that perfects it. We think if we do the right things, we say the right words, we do not swear, we say our prayers before meals, we are perfecting our faith. That does not perfect our faith. Jesus perfects our faith. The more we point our hearts to Jesus, the more we're just putting ourselves out there, he perfects our faith. That's what separates us from every other religion. Because it's not about a religion, it's about this faith in Jesus. And because of his sacrifice, because of what he did, we don't have to do it. You're right. We can't walk on water. That's a fact. Peter did not walk on the water by himself. He walked on the water because of Jesus. He could never have done it in his strength. I don't care how smart Peter was, how much he worked out, how much he practiced, what all skills he had. Dude wasn't walking on water. It took an encounter with Jesus to do that. He is the initiator. He is the perfecter, but it takes us a step of faith to go towards that. Honestly, it's crazy to step away from anything that's familiar. To step away from something that you know what's going on, especially if you call yourself a Christian or a Jesus follower, and you've been following him, and you make life decisions and financial decisions. Maybe you've moved because of him, and you've served, and you're leading your life because of how Jesus, and he puts you in a spot, and then he's like, that was great, now I'm going to put you somewhere else. Why does he do that? Maybe it's simply today that he wants you to stand in your convictions. Stand in your conviction. That's stepping out of the boat. Maybe he wants to step out for your career, relationships. Maybe he wants you to step up in your moral situations. Maybe stepping out says there's a new chapter in your life that's about to begin. Are you ready for it? A new calling, a new opportunity, a second chance, a new relationship, schooling. What is that he wants to call you into? God will put us in boats. Jesus puts us in boats, but he also calls us out of them again. Jesus means believing in our convictions, standing in biblical principles, knowing that outweighs our emotional response. Let me say that again. That conviction in Jesus outweighs just our gut emotional response to a situation. It's understanding where Jesus is taking us, where we've come, where we're going. And it's going to look different than a lot of people in our world, and I'm okay with it. So what is this faith thing all about? The step of faith. I'm going to close and ask the worship team to come back up. So I'll say it again. What is this faith journey all about? Why is Jesus such a big deal? Because I talk about him a lot here on Sunday mornings, but if you're around me at all, I'm the same guy I am up here. I'm loud. I say things I shouldn't say. But I do believe with all my heart that Jesus changed my life, and he is continuing to shape and change people's lives. All he's saying is if you're willing to take a step of faith, he's like saying, I've got you in this journey of faith. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know what's going on. You don't have to always understand your circumstances, but he's saying, I've got you. Take the step of faith, and he's like, I'm going to meet you right there in that spot. Most of us find ourselves standing on that edge of the boat. We don't even know it. We find ourselves at times in life where we're standing on the edge of the boat, and it's calmy and it's stormy out and it's windy, and we're not sure what to do next. We're not sure what direction we're supposed to go. We're not sure what the decision we're supposed to make. We find ourselves standing on the edge of a boat. And we can hunker down and hope we can just survive, or we can look out and we can take a step of faith. Sometimes that step of faith, and imagine if we were a community of faith that did that together, that we stood there together and we weren't alone. That we don't have to do it all on our own. And then Jesus wants to use different ones of us in this process to say, I've got you. I'm with you. There are people right now in this church that says, I've got you and I'm with you. But it takes two people to do it. It takes us to take a step of faith, and it takes another to reach out that hand. Church, can we do that together? That we can stand in the middle of a storm. Maybe we don't want to rock the boat. Maybe we're just trying to keep it steady. But Jesus is going to rock our boats. I'll tell you right now, the more we try to figure him out, the more he is going to shake it up in our life, and not for a bad way. To believe that he's the one driving the ship, and we're on the ride, and it's going to be good. Well, I'm going to close this in prayer. We're going to sing another song this morning. What I mean by closing us in prayer is I'm going to give us a chance just to close our eyes. I know we have lots going on today, but I would just ask you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath. In just a moment, and we're going to be out of here in a few, but I want you to take a moment. Because it's a time that we sit and we listen that God wants to speak to you. This whole story of Jesus on the water is a representation of our life. See, in our own life, we can't do the impossible. We can never make ourselves right. We can never do enough good stuff to be with Jesus in heaven. Jesus did all those things. He's asking us to take that step of faith to believe. That's our response, is to say yes to Jesus. This morning, as we close our eyes and we sit here and we listen, where is it right now that life has you? What does that future look like? What is that challenge or struggle? What is that passion or joy that's right before you that you know you're waiting for an answer, you're waiting for clarity, but Jesus just really wants to say, man, I got you. I've got you. And some of us this morning, it starts with just saying yes. I believe that you could pick someone like me who's not perfect, who's broken, who's made mistakes. And for some of us here this morning, he wants us to shake up what has been going on, to believe big, to believe in miracles, to ask for prayer, to ask for healing, to put ourselves in there to relationships, to make new friends, to open ourselves up to new possibilities. God, I thank you that we get to come together as a church family here Sunday mornings. But God, it doesn't end here, that we take it into our friendships and into our life and into our week. So for just one more moment, take a deep breath. Lord, you got this. Amen.